For 979 days, Russia has been waging a brutal, all-out war against another member of the United Nations and its people. With every day that Russia suffers immense losses, the Kremlin becomes increasingly desperate. Inviting North Korea to join this war would be a brazen escalation of Russia's aggression and a threat to global security and stability. The United States has seen additional reports indicating that North Korean soldiers have begun moving into Western Russia. We believe that the DPRK has sent approximately 10,000 troops to eastern Russia to train, and that Russian forces near Ukraine will be strengthened in the next few weeks. Some of these soldiers have already moved closer to Ukraine. We are increasingly concerned that Russia intends to use these soldiers to fight or support combat operations against Ukrainian forces in Russia's Kursk Oblast. We are monitoring closely and consulting with our Ukrainian partners. We are calling on Russia to refrain from taking these steps. If North Korean soldiers were deployed on the battlefield, this would be a further and serious escalation of the conflict. The decision to deploy North Korean soldiers would also be an unmistakable sign that Russia is increasingly desperate, having already suffered more than 500,000 casualties. Russia knows that the DPRK threatens peace and security in the region. The Kremlin knows that the DPRK's illegal ballistic missile and nuclear weapons programs are undermining the non-proliferation regime. The world has been facing the threat of nuclear war for decades. Russia knows that the DPRK has one of the worst human rights records in the world. Russia would not turn to the DPRK as a military ally if it were not desperate and had no other options. Just a few years ago, Russia supported several Security Council resolutions on the supply and provision of arms to North Korea. Military assistance to North Korea, prohibiting the training of North Korean soldiers and the provision of weapons or similar material, constitutes a violation of Security Council resolutions 1718, 1774, and 2270, as each of these resolutions imposed restrictions on military cooperation with the DPRK because of the DPRK's actions, including its illegal nuclear weapons and missile programs, which threaten peace and security. Now, Moscow not only engages in both of these activities in support of its unprovoked war, but has also signed a mutual defense pact with Pyongyang. This council, including the Russian Federation, also imposed arms embargoes on Iran and the DPRK to curb those countries' illegal weapons of mass destruction programs. We ask ourselves what Russia has to give the DPRK and Iran in return for their support. At least we know that Russia is blocking the Sanctions Committee for North Korea. This committee is a protective measure against the development of nuclear weapons by the DPRK. Russia's increasing military dependence on Iran and the PRC is endangering the world, particularly through the increasing ability of the DPRK and Iran to catastrophically threaten the Indo-Pacific and the Middle East. Russia must stop. It is not too late for Russia to change its illegal and dangerous course and end the war. It is not too late for Russia to withdraw its troops from Ukraine, to become part of the world community again, and to restore its global reputation. Without Russia's will, the international community must act to protect Ukraine from Russia and North Korea. A Russian victory in Ukraine with North Korean support, even partial, would dangerously destabilize the world. So let me be clear. Even with the addition of North Korean troops, Russian forces will not stand against Ukraine. We will stand with Ukraine. We will stand with the UN Charter, and we will stand by the rules-based system and principles that give us security. We will protect them no matter what is necessary. Our decision is firm. There is no doubt. There is only one safe solution to Russia's aggression: the complete withdrawal from Ukraine. Thank you, Madam President. I now give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation. Madam President, when we heard today about the request for a meeting in the Security Council, we were surprised by the cynicism and triviality of our Western colleagues and their blatant double standards. We understand very well that the situation on the front is catastrophic for the Kyiv regime, especially after its failed adventure in Kherson that led to the collapse of the positions of the Ukrainian armed forces. So much so that its Western mentors have decided to cover up this unfavorable development, which could influence the opinion of voters in these countries. But we fear that even they, who are used to fake evidence and phrases like "most likely," have limits to use when it comes to spreading blatant disinformation. However, it turns out there are no limits, and Washington, London and company have reached a new low today. It was once said in this room that we are dismantling washing machines and other appliances to get microchips because we only have enough rockets for a day or two. Then we heard statements about abusing babies with spoons, catching people on the streets because no one wants to fight, and bombing the Transfiguration Cathedral in Odessa. All blatant lies spread about the Russian armed forces. These lies will become textbook examples for studies of disinformation and propaganda, as they are gross provocations of the West used to cover up the crimes of their allies in Kyiv. I would like to thank Ambassador Woodward for her concern for the Russian budget. She used the expression empowers Russia, and I would like to invite the representative of the United Kingdom to Russia so that she can see things for herself. But I am afraid that what she sees will disappoint her, as it does not correspond to reality. The statements about North Korean soldiers on our front should not surprise anyone, as they are all blatant lies designed to distract from the truly significant issues that threaten international peace and security. We see this again when we listen to the complaints of the United States and its allies. Today's performance has only one goal: an attempt to justify its own decision to send NATO troops to support the regime of the failed dictator in Kyiv, and to conceal the fact that NATO soldiers and specialists are present in the areas controlled by Kyiv. Regardless of the pretext, these foreign forces are killed or captured in the dozens and hundreds of them every day. Videos and obituaries of high-ranking judges and specialists died tragically from heart attacks in the hike, where in reality they were networking together with commando training bases or defense factories of Ukraine. We also note that the hysteria surrounding the North Korean issue miraculously coincides with a decree by President Zelensky that allows foreigners serving in leadership positions in the Ukrainian military. This is not to mention the continued supply of weapons and intelligence information to the Kyiv regime, without which Zelensky and his cabinet could no longer fight. We'll talk about that tomorrow. I just want to ask one question. Even if everything about cooperation between Russia and North Korea were true, why do the United States and its allies believe they have the right to support the Kyiv regime, while Russian allies are denied the same right? Ladies and gentlemen, where does this new sense of superiority and impunity come from? The belief that what you are allowed, others are forbidden. Your misleading narrative that Ukraine is the victim and Russia is the aggressor only works for those who have no idea about the background of the Ukrainian crisis, or who simply do not want to know what happened. But all sensible and understanding colleagues know that our special military operation would never have taken place in Ukraine if the Kyiv regime had not started a war against the civilian population in the Donbass after the Maidan coup orchestrated by the West and then sabotaged the Minsk agreement approved by this Security Council. You can see what a victim Ukraine is, for example, in August, when the gang of Zelensky unprovoked the Russian border area. The internet is full of evidence of these crimes in uniform, their attacks on civilians, women and children, civilian vehicles and ambulances, their rapes, looting, destruction of houses and livestock. The proportion of foreign mercenaries, especially Polish, American and British, is extraordinarily high. Those people you want to present as victims of Russian aggression, who have a right to self-defense, committed these crimes, and evidence of them was shown at the ARIA formula meeting on October 25th. Your representatives came with already prepared speeches that completely ignored the reality that you had just seen. That was the height of cynicism. Colleagues, the reckoning for Zelensky's foolish and deadly adventures has begun, and you, ladies and gentlemen, need to adjust your theatrical speeches and come up with something else that is more sophisticated. Otherwise, it will not seem convincing and will only distract from the true nature of the regime in Kyiv. Madam President, the question of cooperation in this area is open. The DPRK is a neighbor and close partner, and we are developing relations in many areas. Our interaction is transparent. We make visits, sign international treaties, and conclude trade agreements in various areas of bilateral cooperation. This is our sovereign right. I would like to emphasize that Russian cooperation with the DPRK in military and other areas is in accordance with international law, does not violate any laws, and does not pose a threat to other countries or the international community. We will continue this cooperation in the future, and no one can prevent us from doing so. On June 19th, as you know, we signed a comprehensive strategic partnership treaty with the DPRK. This was a natural consequence of our friendly relations that have reached a new high level and the geopolitical upheavals that made a legal update necessary in the interests of both sides. The treaty is no secret. It has been published and contains the fundamental principles for the further development of our bilateral relations. They serve to deepen partnership and strategic cooperation in a wide range of priority areas and to build a fair international system, all of which you can read for yourself. There are therefore no reasons other than the instructions of our Western colleagues to present our cooperation as a threat. Madam President, today's Western spectacle in the Security Council pursues an obvious purpose: to shift attention away from their own failures to supply weapons, military advisors, and Western troops, which do not contribute to the de-escalation of the conflict and increase the suffering of the civilian population. We firmly believe that the only solution to the current crisis is a ceasefire and the beginning of negotiations to establish peace in Ukraine. The Ukrainian authorities must stop the bloodshed and pay attention to the causes of the conflict. The only solution to the situation is to take into account the interests of all parties involved. The Russian Federation will work to achieve this goal. Thank you for your attention.